A casual morning stop for coffee turned into an ordeal when Alana Brooks found herself in handcuffs, humiliated, and thrown into the back of a patrol car without a single explanation. But when she made one phone call, the officers realized they had just made the worst mistake of their careers. What happens when the truth comes to light? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. Alana adjusted the strap of her handbag as she stepped into steady grounds. The cozy cafe nestled in the heart of downtown Philadelphia. It had been a hectic morning, and her day ahead wasn't any easier. Court filings, back-to-back meetings, and a late-night prep session for an upcoming civil rights lawsuit. But first, she needed her usual, a vanilla cold brew with oat milk. The place was buzzing with the morning rush. She stole a quick glance at her watch, 7:42 a.m. If she placed her order quickly, she could be back in her car by 7:50 and at her office before the city traffic swallowed her whole. She stepped forward, scrolling through her mental checklist, when a sharp command shattered the hum of conversation. "Hey, stop right there." For a second, Alana thought the voice was directed at someone else. But as she turned, confusion tightened in her chest. Two uniformed officers stormed toward her, their hands hovering near their belts, expressions sharp and unyielding. Her pulse spiked. "Me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the sudden weight in her stomach. "Hands where we can see them," one of the officers barked. He was tall, built like a linebacker, with a hardened expression and close-cropped hair. Alana's brows knit together, but she slowly lifted her hands. "Excuse me? What is this about?" The second officer, a burly man with a reddish-brown beard, grabbed her wrist before she could move. "You match the description of a suspect we're looking for. We need you to come with us." Her breath caught. A suspect. She instinctively tried to pull back, but his grip tightened. "I literally just walked in here." The first officer pulled out his cuffs, eyes narrowing. "Ma'am, don't make this harder than it needs to be." A hushed silence settled over the cafe. People whispered. Some looked away, pretending not to see. Others had already pulled out their phones, recording. Alana forced herself to stay calm. "This is a mistake. I'm an attorney. I know my rights. What exactly am I being accused of?" The bearded officer scoffed. "Armed robbery. Happened an hour ago." Alana let out a sharp laugh, more out of disbelief than amusement. "Robbery? I've been at home getting ready for work. Check the footage from my building. You can explain everything at the station," the buzz-cut officer said flatly before snapping the cold metal cuffs around her wrists. Alana inhaled sharply. She scanned the cafe, locking eyes with a young woman near the counter, her phone trembling in her hand. "This isn't right," the woman blurted out. "She didn't do anything. She just got here." "Mind your business," the officer snapped. Alana lifted her chin. "You should listen to her." But they didn't. Instead, they led her out into the morning air toward a waiting squad car. Her jaw tightened. "Do you even know who I am?" she asked coolly. The bearded officer smirked. "Yeah, a suspect." Alana let out a breath, steadying herself. "No, I'm Alana Brooks, and my brother is Elijah Brooks, the U.S. Attorney General." Silence. The officers exchanged a glance, the confidence in their eyes flickering. "Just for a second. That's supposed to mean something to us." Alana's lips curled into a humorless smile. "It means you just made the biggest mistake of your career." The squad car smelled of stale coffee and vinyl as Alana sat in the back, her hands still bound behind her. The sharp bite of the cuffs dug into her skin, but that wasn't what burned most. It was the humiliation, the injustice, one she had fought against for years but was now experiencing firsthand. Officer Daniels, the bearded one, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "You got a real attitude problem, lady. That mouth of yours won't help you." Alana met his gaze, unflinching. "Neither will your badge when this is over." Beside him, the buzz-cut officer, Reynolds, chuckled. "Let me guess. You're going to sue us? Go ahead. Not our first rodeo." Alana leaned forward as much as she could. "You still don't get it, do you?" Daniels grunted. "Get what?" "Who my brother is." Reynolds turned slightly. "Oh yeah? Some fancy government suit." Alana smirked. "Not just any suit. The highest-ranking prosecutor in the country. The one who has the power to open a federal investigation on both of you before you even clock out today." The air in the car shifted. Daniels cleared his throat. That's a damn lie. Alana tilted her head. Call him and find out. Reynolds hesitated before grabbing the radio. Dispatch, run a background check on, what's her name? Alana Brooks, she supplied. Static filled the car. Then, you sure about this arrest? Reynolds frowned. What kind of question is that? A pause. She's an attorney. And, you might want to confirm her emergency contact. Daniel stiffened. Why? Because it's Elijah Brooks, the U.S. Attorney General. A curse slipped from Daniel's lips. Reynolds gripped the wheel tighter. Alana's smile didn't waver. Another voice crackled through the radio. Also, her home security footage confirms she was inside her apartment during the time of the robbery. She's got an alibi. Silence. Daniels exhaled sharply, shaking his head. What do we do, man? Reynolds swallowed hard before finally pulling to the side of the road. He turned, his expression unreadable. Alana raised a brow. You can start by uncuffing me. A tense moment passed before he reached for his key, unlocking the cuffs. As the cold steel slipped from her wrists, Alana rolled them, wincing at the soreness. Daniels rubbed a hand over his face. Look, she held up a hand. Save it. Pulling her phone from her bag, she typed out a message. You've done enough already. Reynolds clenched his jaw. It was a mistake. Alana let out a dry laugh. Oh, trust me. I know. Alana flexed her fingers, trying to shake the stiffness from her wrists as she stared at the officers. She could see it now, the growing panic behind their rigid expressions, the way their shoulders squared like they were bracing for impact. But it was too late. The damage was done. She inhaled deeply, forcing herself to stay composed. She had spent years battling injustice in courtrooms, standing beside clients who had endured humiliation, wrongful arrests, and worse. She had heard their stories, seen their tears, and now, she was one of them. What happens now? Reynolds finally asked, his voice a fraction softer than before. Alana tilted her head, considering him. If they thought an apology, a quick release, and an awkward silence would make this go away, they were sorely mistaken. She slipped her phone out of her bag and pressed a button. The call had been live for the last 5 minutes. Elijah Brooks' voice rang through the car's speakers, sharp and controlled. I've heard enough. Daniels sucked in a breath. What the? Officers Daniels and Reynolds, Elijah continued, his voice cool and methodical. You are to remain exactly where you are. I have already contacted your department's internal affairs unit, and I suggest you start thinking carefully about how you'll explain this in your official reports. Reynolds swallowed hard, gripping the wheel as if he could steer his way out of this. Daniels just stared at Alana, eyes darting between her and the phone. Alana took her time rubbing her wrists before speaking. You thought you could do this and walk away clean. How many times have you done it before? How many people have you cuffed, humiliated, and dismissed, knowing full well they weren't guilty? Neither officer spoke. You see, the problem with power, she continued, voice even but laced with steel, is that when you abuse it, you always think you'll get away with it. Until you don't. Daniels clenched his jaw. We were following protocol. Alana let out a humorless laugh. No, you weren't. Protocol doesn't involve slamming cuffs on an innocent person in a coffee shop without asking a single question. It doesn't include dragging someone out like a criminal based on nothing more than a description. If I didn't know my rights, if I wasn't who I am, what would have happened to me today? The silence in the car was suffocating. Elijah's voice came through again. Alana, I need you to step away from the vehicle. Officers, remain where you are. Without another word, Alana opened the door and stepped onto the sidewalk. A second car had pulled up behind them. A woman in a sharp suit. Internal affairs, no doubt, was already approaching. Alana turned back just once, locking eyes with Reynolds. You wanted to teach me a lesson? She said quietly. Now it's your turn to learn one. Then, without another glance, she walked away. Justice was just getting started.